So this is Coaching Conversations in Cannoli, which is a series that we've put together to explore cross-disciplinary business challenges with some industry leaders, one of whom we're blessed to have here today. We try to engage, and Katie, you know me as doing this in a way that's a little bit more enjoyable, but as like maybe some purpose and bent behind it. In this case, we are going to have and hopefully elicit some humble transparency. And there is that promise of that delectable Italian pastry, the cannoli. So Coaching Conversations and Cannoli, our guest in this episode, Katie Heley, who has been, I would say at this point, the greatest portion of my life as a friend, but also as an admirer. I am been watching your trajectory and the way you've developed out not just your career, but your persona, your brand, your reputation, from European investment banks to Manhattan real estate and national real estate advisor, to now being very much entrenched in the senior housing through your firm, Walker Heley. But before we get into that, in particular, the industry itself is very unique, and it's something that isn't very familiar to a lot of folks. So just talk to me about the industry and how you arrived at that, and why it's like a most amazing time to be focused on senior housing in particular, especially with the migrations that we've had in this country over the last year plus.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the introduction. That was great. I should have you on more of my phone calls. I think that I fell into senior housing like so many people do. I don't know how many kids are in college right now saying, I really hope to work in senior housing when I get done. It doesn't really happen like that. I was hoping to come back from my stint in Europe and get back into JP Morgan, where I was working at the time. And the only position open was senior housing. JP Morgan had started this kind of alternative property investment fund, and senior housing really fits the bill. I think because it's not just real estate, it's also a healthcare business. So it's one of the most weird, kind of vehicles as an investment, because you don't have this rent roll that just steps up at certain intervals, right? You have alive people that you're in theory hoping to take care of through the end of their lives, if you're doing it right and offering the right products for the markets that you're in. So
there's financial, there's the social component, right? And then there's the health component, because you actually are responsible at some point for these people, not just because you feel it, but because they depend upon it.
Yeah, I mean, your air conditioner turning off in your office is a lot different than, your air conditioner not working in where you live, right? And then, I mean, the multifamily people would be like, yeah, we get it. But it is a lot different, as senior housing, because it is that care component, and it's a big part of the business. It was really foreign to me when I started, and I was just really fortunate to, intersect with Alice when I came back. And at the time, Alice was with Belmont Village. They're a very premier developer and operator of senior housing. And Alice started with them when they were formed. She's really a guru of senior housing. I don't like to call her a veteran, but she's quite knowledgeable.
She probably prefers you don't either, but Alice being your partner, the Walker of Walker Heley.
That's right. And, we worked together on opposite sides of the table. I was really on the investment side. This big commercial bank had money in all these different, joint ventures that were senior housing developers and operators. And Alice was on the operation side, and she was the client interface. And, we did that for a number of years. And then, I don't want to call it the mommy track, but what happens where you're married and you're at a point in your career where you're deciding kids, not kids, what are you going to do? And we both ended up having children, and just realizing how difficult it was to stay in our more traditional roles. And we both stepped back for a while. But it's hard to step back out of senior housing because it's also very, very small, which I think people don't really understand. It's not, like so many other sectors.
And when you say you step back, you had already formed Walker Heley, and at that point, you both arrived at time to spend a little bit on the home front. I know you have two boys. She has a situation that she's also, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was the time. So you hit pause on Walker Heley and the relationships you had.
Yeah, we really weren't sure what we were going to do. We were kicking around doing appraisals, senior housing appraisals. As you may know, and maybe some of your audience knows, a lot of investments, you have to value them. And in real estate, you need an appraisal. And it's a lot different than appraising traditional real estate. And it was a challenge out of the bank I came out of. And so we were really thinking we were going to do that. And in the meantime, we just kept getting contacted through people who knew us, asking for kind of one-off things like, could you evaluate this building we're looking at doing, or this deal we're going to do? And it just kind of really organically evolved to to the empire that it is
So
today.
it is for those who don't know, it's not one of those names necessarily that you hear over the dinner table every day, but perhaps if you're in South Florida or Central Florida, you would hear it more regularly, or if you're elderly, or if the elders in the family are. But your superior analysis, your pedigree from where you came from analysis as well, and understanding how to look at this, and the fact that it's such a niche market and isn't the textbook way, there is no textbook way necessarily. You really have to have an understanding of how to price these things, who the players are, how things get evaluated, maybe even more than I'm aware of. Talk a little bit about the uniqueness and how that continues to be the reason why your phone just rings and you do very little from an outbound marketing perspective.
That's true. We've never actually tried to get business, which that's
It's
on
a
our goals
blessing.
for this year. We're excited to try that, and motivated by some of the clever holiday gifts we've received recently.
Interesting. I got you. Well,
But
my little
yeah,
elves are fast and furiously working with felt and needles. So whatever design you want to go with,
exactly.
we can figure it out.
It is really word of mouth, and it gets back to it just being such a small space. I mean, like so many other things, it behooves you to play nice in the sandbox in senior housing because it is so much word of mouth. But we really position ourselves as working for both investors and for operators, and just trying to bridge that gap, because there are a lot of people, I think, who've invested in senior housing and then realize that it's just not like every other asset class, and kind of don't understand, especially during this COVID time. It's like, why are we not leasing? Well, the health guidelines shut down in-person tours and in-person visits, and there's a lot of hesitancy about putting mom or dad somewhere where you might not be able to see them for months, and that's really what happened throughout 2020 and 2021.
So
So
much of it is counseling as you go, even though you may not be billing people, but
yep,
you're working through things with them to assure them or to dissuade them, or really to just give them the information that they otherwise, and the perspective that they otherwise don't have on their own.
absolutely. And because it is a healthcare business, you do get the state stopping by randomly for visits. And sometimes there's problems, or you have an elopement, which is, even though the lingo, an elopement sounds good, but it's not really. It's somebody who has gotten off the property, out of the community, that should not be out of the community. So,
So this is not a
particularly
cool trip out to
not
Vegas for Grammy and Grandpa, but rather this is like a legitimate
concerning,
concern at this point. Yes,
yes. And so
sadly.
you're on calls, and yeah, I have investors that are saying, elopement, or just getting familiar with the lingo, and even the way the finances behind it work. You're not just renting, you're administering care plans that change, and there's costs associated with that, and all the levels of care that you might need, and when it's time to maybe encourage you to put your loved one in memory care that is not ready to accept that that's what's happening, or into assisted living. So it is such a people business, in addition to being a real estate business.
Well, you have investors, you have the operators, as you said, you even have like residents, you have PR, you have media, right? All contending and all vying for your time based on whoever has the fire now, or whatever urgency there is all of a sudden. How much of that distraction then, really factors into you just getting your job done, and what does that look like on a week in or week out basis?
I think that's something that's really helpful for us, is that Alice has walked in the shoes of so many of these people that are on the ground. It's very easy to sit in your ivory tower in New York and bark down orders to the local communities, who are truly the frontline people that are really, I mean, like so many other healthcare workers, true heroes. They're dealing with really hard things all the time. And so it might not be time to talk about the landscaping contract while we are trying to, get all the residents tested for COVID, because we've had an exposure, And so just really understanding where we can add value versus where we should just stay out of the way, and know that we have the right team on the ground, is what directs our priorities most weeks.
Probably more difficult though to step in and have a firm hand or make a very firm suggestion, as opposed to maybe letting someone experience something on their own and just keep quiet.
I think it really depends on the item. If we have so the executive director at these communities is usually kind of the head. They're running everything, and it's such a tough job, right? Because we want you to have a healthcare background. We want you to be great with finances. We'd love for you to deal with the investment arm of it, as well as hiring and all. You're doing it all. And so if they want to try some new, dinner menu options, sure. If we are looking at maybe a whole new care program, no, like, we will step in. So it's, you let people take risks, but with some
That's a
boundaries.
slippery slope though. Someone gets hired, right, in an ED capacity, and now you is it explicit that you have the power and the authority and the expectation to get involved in that way? Or is that also a little bit of a nuanced intersection or interjection of what you know to be the better way, or perhaps the way forward?
Yeah, I think that has just come through trial and error over the years, and also just the different attitudes of ownership groups. You have people that are like anything, micromanagers, to have never even been there. There's a lot of reluctance actually with some of our investment groups for going on site and visiting these places. It's just not wanting to be in a senior housing community,
Mm.
for whatever your maybe personal feelings are about aging or, that chapter of life.
I don't have any problems with aging. As a matter of fact, as you see, I display my age very silverly. It's
Clooney-esque, Greco.
Wow. I wish there was a button, a bell I could ring. That was fantastic. I got to pay you better. Clooney-esque. I'll take it. Even without the tequila company, or the fancy Bonneville that he was riding through the fields of agave on all of his marketing. Lest I digress. So, Ms. Heley, I do ask in that capacity, if we were going to record a marketing segment and you were going to tell me or the audience, what it is why we should be hiring you, or why we should bring in Walker Heley, and what the highlights are of the service that you provide, the problems that you help us solve. What
Yeah.
might that sound like? I'm sure you have it at the ready, and I gave you a couple of seconds to think about it or pull it together.
Why you would bring in Walker Heley? We come in at so many different stages. So if I'm talking to you as a builder, I'm probably going to talk to you about market demographics and really what you're doing, because senior housing is just shifting so much. That old model of we're going to park you in the lobby with some Wii bowling and popcorn is out the window. And today's seniors don't see themselves as being seniors, until they're really in the 80s and 90s now. So I would say to you as a builder, you want us on your side just to talk to you about our experiences in the last 20 years in senior housing and the shifts, the paradigm shifts, and what you're offering, and really looking at the cost to offer these things. It's nice to say we'll have daily yoga and essential oil classes and all this other stuff, but then you have to look at, can we really staff this? What does this cost? How do we price for that? And now if you've gone ahead and built that thing, we told you we were not really thrilled that that was a great idea. We'll probably see you again in 2 or 3 years after you've opened and are struggling to attract perhaps the population you were hoping for, or that demographic. And now we're going to talk to you about maybe shifting what you're offering. Maybe you only built assisted living, but you're in a market that really needed memory care. So we might talk to you about whether or not we could exchange licensure to do that, or reconfigure the building, or whatever we would need to do. And then when you've realized that you should just probably go back to office because it's much easier, we will be there to talk to you about transitioning out of it and other uses if you've really gone ahead and built something that maybe just wasn't exactly the right fit. So I just think senior housing, it really comes down to experience. Most people in it will tell you that there were missteps in their own careers until they got to the promised land.
Well, that promised land sounds pretty large and plentiful, and it sounds like the players in these spaces certainly have very deep pockets, if not very astute and sophisticated. Nonetheless, in this particular space, they may not have as much sophistication and experience as you. So great to bring you in. Give an example, if you have one, of like a really tense situation, and you can anonymize the participants
Sure.
to keep them safe, or rather to keep you safe. I mean, you said builders. I don't know if it's any of my paisan. You might want to watch out on dropping names. Tell us an example of a very difficult relationship, and how you may have navigated through a conversation that got them to do something or swallow a decision that they made that really put them in a bad place or an undesirable place.
I think we've seen it in kind of all those, it's really 3 groups of people we work with, right? There's the investors, there's the operators, and then there's the builders. And I think that it just, like so many other relationships that go south, it's usually down to communication issues. So, miscommunications and stuff. So we've had situations where we've had an investment group that's unhappy that, their investment's not doing what they wanted it to do. And so of course the first reaction is like, let's make a change, let's change the operator there. And I mean, that's pretty traditional in real estate. I think you'd look at who's running your building or who's doing whatever and just get them out of there. I think that a lot of investors fail to understand just how tied in the operator is to your entire clientele there, right? They're the people that your residents are seeing every day. They're the people that their adult children are seeing on a regular basis. So just saying like, we're changing the operator, goodbye, see you later. It comes with so many extra things. we got to redo all the resident agreements. And you have no guarantee that the staff that they might be very attached to is going to stay under the new operator that's brought in. And so we've been in tough conversations with groups that just want to keep doing operator changes. And it's like, this is really a last resort and not something that we're just going to do regularly, because it's so much turmoil. It's, about 6 months before things really kind of get settled back into place.
That sounds like a very prolonged period of referencing the strategy that makes sense and leading, or as best you can, leaning on toward that direction, but not necessarily being met with cooperation. And at some point, the operator or the owner or the investors, the builder, must relent. And that's probably a very sensitive time, because if you've been the one who's saying it, to actually admit that they were wrong and you were right might be tough. Do you come across that on, somewhat regularly, or is the market robust enough now to kind of sweep that under the rug?
I think it so comes down to the individual groups that you're dealing with, because we work with everything from like institutional people who are maybe not as personally tied to something that maybe a small hedge fund or a small private equity group built with, their three partners. And particularly in smaller markets, you sometimes get into a position where we've all agreed that we're going to do an operator change, but your ownership group wants to hire someone that they know. And you're like, well, maybe we don't want to just go with, your friend from college. Maybe we want to cast a wider net here and explore the options. So I think that
you help in that selection process?
Yes,
do you have like profiles and kind of coaching them through who might be the right person, or even going to the extent of interviewing and helping select?
We are almost always involved in interviewing and selection process. Mostly, somebody recently asked me, how do you hire in senior housing? And like, you just don't go on like some website and look for this. It really does come down to, relationships. And again, because it is a small market, it's a small industry. It's not like there's just thousands of these operators everywhere. And that really is true in kind of secondary locations in smaller markets.
Well, it's very niche, but the market itself is quite large and booming. Do you have some numbers, some like size comparisons, so we get a sense of, what's actually moving around in the industry?
I wish I did. That would be interesting to tell you, maybe kind of like how many new communities are coming online each year or something along those lines. Yeah, I really don't. A senior housing tends to, the people that do it well, and I'll go back again to Belmont Village because Alice came from there. I covered a maternity leave for her there and have some ties to the company. And I think they're just a great example of a group that's doing it well. And so anyone listening to this that has
high-end brand, quality product, experience.
And not just that, like we'll tackle the hardest markets to build in, and then we'll build there. The ones that require senior housing always comes under, so odd to me, but so much feedback from the community. When this comes before city councils and stuff, there's always lots of comments, and you would think it'd be so welcome because it's right. It's not it's not noisy. You're not
intrusive. Yeah, usually asleep by the time.
Things along those lines. And yet it really is very tricky to build, and it is also tricky to build just from the materials that are required in each state and the construction that has to be there, because you have populations that aren't ambulatory and populations that need to be secure, for dementia care and stuff like that. So it's very tricky to build it, tricky to license it, and then tricky to find that quality operator that's going to run it for you. So.
Well, and this isn't a destination where people necessarily look forward to it. Oftentimes it needs to be close enough to family because it's their next home.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's their final, but certainly from the Midwest, as nice as warm climates in the South might sound, that could preclude family from ever visiting. So there's a need, and there's certainly population growth at this time and transitioning into the later years. So what are the markets that are, I guess, really booming and have become a little bit more of the processing, the steamroll areas or geographies, and then what are the ones that are a little more difficult to deal with or to navigate?
I think traditionally, certainly probably for the last like 15 to 20 years, you've really had people concentrating on the areas where the money is. I should mention that I mostly work on private Class A communities. So these are not communities that take any sort of government money like, Medicare or anything along those lines. And so that's a disclaimer. And so when you're looking at that private for-profit model, you're looking in markets that can afford what you're offering. So I always think of Chicago as a big market. The South Jersey, Philadelphia suburbs have been very popular over the years. Of course, California, Florida, obviously, Texas. And so, those are the markets that I think for the last 15 to 20 years, people have been attempting to build in. And now you're seeing some offshoots of that, like Austin, of course. Florida remains popular. But I would say that aside from just a little kind of sprawl, like not sprawl, but other markets being incorporated, you're also looking at now people moving into, because this is all shifted, right? Like you're not retiring at 65 and likely to be dead at 85. Like this is totally shifting later now. So you have a lot of people looking at maybe that active adult piece where they are maybe going to show up in their 70s and try and stay there until they're in their 80s or maybe even early 90s, and then be looking for that care component. So you have a lot of people now trying to figure out if they're going to try to offer all of it, like the whole continuum from like independent all the way through memory care if you needed it, or you're just going to focus on a certain type of service. So I think that's kind of more of the debate versus like new markets. And new markets kind of follow adult children, I think, in a lot of cases too. Because to your point, people do tend to bring their parents in closer, particularly not in the active adult sector as much, but certainly for the carriers.
Sure. Well, speaking about children, you too, you not only do a coaching job and you have a partnership in your business, and you certainly are helping coach and evolve the mindset and the strategy that are deployed by those builders, by those operators, the investors. At home, you've got two boys. You have a household that's very active. You have a state that has not necessarily made it easy to manage all that. Um, talk a little bit about that and what that's been like as a parent, as a successful professional who is also a parent, and as a person. You're a young person with a lot of ideas and thoughts and probably pastimes and activities that you'd like to partake in. So the balance between all that is something that many people are striving to figure out and not necessarily doing well. So what are some of the secrets, or what are some of the things that we don't see behind the curtain?
Yeah, I think Alice and I know if she was sitting next to me, would be nodding along in agreement that we feel so fortunate to have carved out a space, because it is so hard for so many women who step back for a few years to have kids, wait for them to get into maybe kindergarten or something where they're in theory, up until COVID, would be leaving your house on a regular basis. It can be really hard to get back into it. And particularly in the industry we're in, it's extremely heavy on females in it up until the senior levels. And then you tend to have a lot more men at the top, which is always frustrating to me, of course, but also interesting to watch that dynamic play out. And so personally, I think it's really been wonderful to have that flexibility. And I guess what you don't see behind the curtain is, like, of course, it would be more lucrative to go back to what I used to do on an institutional level from a financial standpoint. And I think that that's probably the problem that so many women are encountering at this point in their careers, where they look to like the flexibility to keep everything okay from a household, education, raising children standpoint and a career standpoint, versus like the finance component that comes with it. And we're just fortunate to, be in control of our schedule a lot. When I say we, I mean Alice and I. So I'd say that's how I have juggled it so far. COVID was just like a real wild card that no one saw coming. So I think that there's most moms listening to this that were trying to work and homeschool and do everything else, and dads too, but particularly moms, I think it was just the extra burden of just everything. I know at my house it was mostly meals. Like, these children just can eat. I'm like, what, we're eating again? Like, we need to get back to school.
I've noticed that they're in shape, but they certainly look healthy, and they're probably almost as tall as me, and they're not quite as old. So
no joke, they are quite tall.
fractionally,
Yeah, my oldest
yes, the
one's
boys
very
seem to
tall.
burn through it a bit quicker. At being
Yeah.
a girl dad, it's kind of like a grazing throughout the day, which is a little easier to manage. Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm hearing in there something that's very common from an entrepreneurial perspective, which is that little bit of like jealousy across the fence, or like peering over the fence to like the grass being greener and saying, oh, it'd be nice to be part of the big conglomerate. It'd be nice to have everything kind of organized. Yes, I'm responsible for what I'm responsible for, but I have the mothership to help out, as opposed to the freedom, the flexibility of being the entrepreneur. But then also, you need to muck the stalls, you need to like groom the horses, you need to make sure that the hay gets delivered and put out even in the cold weather or the rain. And that might be a bit of a burden and frustrating, especially in times when kids can't be at school, states shut down, or even when you're on the road. And I know your travels literally go from coast to coast.
That's true. Yeah, no, I would agree with all of those things that you said. I think that it's a special breed of people that want to have their own business in many ways, because to your point, I think that you tend to spend almost less time doing what you really love to do sometimes when you're really small, because you are doing accounting and you're doing marketing and, in theory, trying to drive new business, which, as I mentioned, we have this whole list of things we'd like to get to, and it just feels like there's just never enough time. So
Sure.
isn't that everybody's? I feel like that's everybody these days. Not enough time.
I
So.
do feel like it is, and there's a complacency. I would say for 22, we have started this year gangbuster across the board. I'm hearing many people who similarly are motivated, have stuck it out, have figured out the way to make it work, even though they may show under under new color or with
Sure.
receding hairline or whatever I might be exhibiting, if I can for a minute resemble that individual. Now we are coming out of a period and saying we are raring to go, and there are actually fewer who are willing to do the dirty work, fewer who are willing to go that extra mile, to go that extra distance of just preparing for the communication, preparing for the meeting, preparing for the podcast. And that to me is, it's simultaneously, I know we've had conversations like this over our time and knowing each other. That to me is similarly like, okay, good job security for me, good opportunity. I know that there's going to be abundance. But that also means that the demand may be a bit overwhelming, and the demand may have strings attached, and the demand may also be something that becomes like so burdensome. And that is a little concerning. The back end of that is, and what's behind it is, I get concerned, I guess, in a country of our size, we might have too many who aren't willing to go after there. And not to digress too much, but certainly we have lived, and you have seen very intimately, how the state of California, the Republic of California, how the fractured up county ruled state of Florida, and certainly you're still very familiar with the state of New York, having been born and raised predominantly here. If you would just touch upon, maybe your thoughts, what you're seeing from a personal perspective. You don't have to go into politics, but from a social perspective, how this might play out for the next year or so, and what you're optimistic about. We want to keep this on the positive, right?
Yeah, okay. Optimistically, I am optimistic
It might be
that
the shorter list. It'll make it easier for you.
I am optimistic that as nothing is getting back to normal, but I do really think that there's a genuine, like, kind of a mindset switch here, like that this is normal now, and we are not going to accept like abrupt school closures and stuff. It's been great to see California kind of come out and say, like, last resort. Whereas, a year ago, it was like, your kid can't go on the playground. What a switch, which really should tell you what they've seen, the damage that was done from those policies. But I think once this, at least the school and the childcare piece, gets a little more cemented, I think you might see some of the labor kind of come back. Because I know personally, I have a number of female friends who've had to take major steps back from their professional lives to handle the instability, of these social systems that should be there, like school, notably school, and when we look at like this great, I don't know what we're calling it at this point, this, great departure from working, and all these open positions, I think that people aren't considering enough how much childcare is coming into play there for so many families. And I keep going back to women, of course, because I am mostly surrounded in my professional life by women, and knowing the challenges of particularly people that have to work in person somewhere like a senior housing community. It's very difficult if your child, here in California, if your kid has a symptom like a headache and gets sent home from school, they're home for 2 more days out of an abundance of caution. And, well, you're our nurse, we need you here right now. And so I think that it's so multi-layered. I do think there are people that aren't rising to the challenge and stuff, but I think that the childcare piece is such a huge part of why we are short-staffed pretty much everywhere at the moment. And so I'm optimistic in 2022 that we'll start to see a little more return to that. And in the long view, I'm optimistic that America might recognize with secure childcare comes better workers. You have people that have such a big concern addressed,
Sure.
on the regular. And of course, I know you spend time in Holland, and I did as well. And some of those countries, you just look at the models that are there, and you think, why can't we do that? And then you realize that Holland's like the size of like Pennsylvania. I mean, and then you realize why we can't do exactly
Sure.
what they do. But you can at least look and say, like, I see why some things work here.
Sure. Yeah, there's a bit there, and certainly at the center of it being what we know and love. And I would not be surprised if you have heard similarly There are folks who, for the first time, were now home and were very excited 2 years ago to learn what their children eat for breakfast and what their morning routine is, and
That's right.
who they're really hanging out with or playing with beyond the more superficial conversations at night or on the weekend when things are different. And with that now comes an acute awareness of how difficult it is to manage that, and how difficult that is or could be for someone who does. And this would go for either partner, right? If in a dual relationship where they both need to work and they both want to work and they both have an identity that for them, for their own sanity, they need to
Right.
get back connected with, and they need to feed not just a little bit, but like a healthy proportion. Can't be taking
Yeah.
like a little teensy bite when that really is a very large part of who you are and what you've built into for several years. So I applaud you and Alice for obviously going that distance. There's another thing though that you have contended with over years, and you live in like the absolute center of technology and social media and the development of things that are not just binge worthy now because of all the programs that are exposing some of this. But you told me something about 2 years ago that was, there was a movement at the time, maybe even 3 years ago now. Wow, it's amazing how 2 years just flies, right? You told me something a pandemic ago about there being a movement among parents, largely parents who were very much integral as engineers and designers of technology, whether it be the hardware, the software, all right, the meta,
Oh, yes.
and how the movement was to completely restrict, almost like zero device, zero interaction until a very late age, or in an absolute must, family that's several time zones away, things like that for
Yeah.
communication and whatnot. And that to me seems now like much more of the craze or the rage, but also that comes with like a huge sacrifice because that may be all the interaction that's available in a lot of situations where schooling is still falling short for the kids. So
Oh, yeah.
talk a little bit about that and how that has shifted and what you're seeing, maybe not just through this period, but what might be going next. If you don't mind, give a perspective. I know it's anecdotal.
Yeah, sure. It's so timely. Our school is getting ready to do a screen-free week, and I think we were
Screen
all
free.
like, screen-free. We were all like, no. I was originally like, that sounds great, and then I was like, huh. And I think that that's reflective of, since I made those comments to you, and not that I was pursuing that particular philosophy at the time, but since I made those comments to you, I then just spent 2 years of really trying to occupy two very active little boys through periods of time where really California shut down beaches, playgrounds. I mean, like the real basics here. Get your kid outside unless you're in an apartment building in Mountain View, California, or somewhere where you don't have a yard. I just think there's like a real fatigue. It's like we've baked, we've crafted, we've daydreamed, we've cloud watched, you name it, we've done it. And
Oral arrangements, origami, I think I saw in there, right?
yeah, I'm not sure what we've taken up recently, but and so you're in this like very weird spot where you're like, I get it, right? Too much screen time, like, and then you're realizing that's their only chance, at least last year, to talk with their friends, like through Minecraft and stuff. And my kids are unbelievable with technology now. I mean, stuff that I would have struggled with, we're on a network, we're on whatever, we're, da, 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 da. They're very good at that. But I think when I made that comment to you, the argument about reducing screen time is that it is so easy. There are all these engineers working to make technology just easier and easier and more accessible and stuff. And funny enough, I deal with that professionally too, right? With the senior population, trying to make it easier. And I think the argument is that your kids really don't need to be exposed to this at the age of 6, 7, 8, because it'll be so easy to use that it's not like we need to practice so much. So
Mm.
I think that there's a lot of support for that. And I just think maybe it's been tampered a little bit, at least out here, by the fact that we've been entertaining people at home for a very
Sure.
long time now. So I kind of
Maybe this
wonder
is
if it's,
maybe this is the necessary cycle where we recognize some of the evils and we also recognize some of the great application, and what many are calling the smartphone being the greatest tool that's been not only mass produced but mass distributed to the
yeah.
population. And someday they might dig us out of some rock fossil and say, wow, this was amazing. For years, all they had was a hammer and a wedge or a lever. And now all of a sudden they had this little device thing, and look at how interconnected and the commerce they could generate. But yeah, there's a bit there. So I do
I
think
don't
that
know.
that becomes more of a, probably, I don't know if it's neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community. It's difficult. The state is the state, the plural, state, not necessarily just California or just New York, but they certainly do have a say from a division of power from federal, but I imagine that it really needs to be much more local.
I also, as we've been having this conversation, I've just been thinking about our age and how it matters in this conversation, because in full disclosure, I think we both fully checked the box for Gen X. I think we're like on the
Yeah,
very end of Gen X,
yeah,
and I feel very lucky to be a Gen Xer, and I have a sibling who just ekes it into Gen Y. And something happened in that little period of time where, we seem to be the last generation. Doesn't this, I'm sounding like the old people now, back in my day, but I really feel like we're one of these last generations that can still remember, like I used a typewriter back when I
yeah.
was, doing a few things
College
to,
applications.
to this, and so I always used to think how wild it was for my grandmother to see, having been born in I think 1918, to see cars to computers in her lifespan, and look what we've just watched in the first half of ours, and how much I think that's influencing some of these attitudes across every topic we've been talking about, careers and working and screen time and educating and stuff, because the generations that are coming after us just have totally different ideas. They seem wild to me, which makes me seem very old. This idea that,
Yeah,
like, I don't want to be chained to my desk 40 hours a week, and I'm not going to put in the time to climb the ladder, and I'm going to have a side hustle, and I'm going to work from, Thailand. You're like, what? And it's becoming very widely accepted and such a change. So I feel like we're kind of in this weird one foot in each, like
yeah,
the old world and the new world, and trying to figure out what you want to instill with your kids and your career and all that with that attitude and that experience.
sure. Yeah, and I pondered similarly. I'll throw out there a gentleman named David Allison has this concept called value graphics. He developed this database, 600,000, maybe even 700,000 now, statistically accurate database where you identify more so the values that matter most to an audience or to a group of people versus their demographics. So to your point, well, yes, age-wise, right, we may fall into a standard demographic. He says disrupt the demographic. It's really more about values. And at this point, we have the flexibility. We've bridged that period of time demographically, but we also have the understanding of the technology that allows us to really find what we value in it and instill that in the home. To your point, wasn't throw the boys in the corner with an iPad or a device of some sort and ignore them all day, but it was bake, it was cook, it was go outside where we could or what property we owned or whatnot and take
Right.
advantage of those things as opposed to those that might have different constraints on them. And the constraints aren't necessarily borne by the state or directed by the state. They could be constraints of the mind or of just their world, their lifestyle, what their comfort zone will permit them. And that to me does pose another conversation that's out there in society. I want to hit pause on that though, and I want to go down the direction because it's related, it's tangential, but for younger talent, I say younger meaning newer, right? Younger to
Sure.
less experienced, less seasoned. What does that look like back to your business, back to senior housing, back to Walker Heley as you look to expand and grow? Surely there are going to be the if you're talking about doing the books and I know the structure, you're going to at some point start to hire people to do all the jobs that you don't have to do. And then
Mhm.
that way you can focus more on the things that only you can do, right? Which is really the plight of the entrepreneur and really refine that more and more and build that base of people doing the tasks that you don't have to do. Someone could do, anyone can do. And in doing so, how do you see yourself or how have you started to attract younger talent, fresher talent, newer talent that maybe solve problems differently, view loyalty and longevity differently? And what are the conversations you and Alice or you and others might be having about that?
Yeah, I mean, in our ideal world, we would hire an analyst or an intern who'd stay with us forever, and then when they got done with college, would come and work for us full time. And what's happened so far is our intern stayed with us forever, and now she is graduating, and we are very sad, but she got a great job that she's going off to, and we're really excited about that, and hope that her time with us has helped launch her to the next chapter. But
Mm,
I think overall, what we're really trying to do is target people that maybe don't have background in senior housing, but who have the right skills, and try to let them see the upside to, and, particularly a sector that I think is largely viewed as not the sexy one. That's the hotel group, that's the retail team. At least it used to be the
sure.
retail team. Things like that, and just trying to explain to people like this is actually a pretty exciting time for the sector that we're in. It really is a big shift. You are having people look at the villages or look at Jimmy Buffett down there with his Margaritaville developments that are going up and stuff, and just I think it really is one of the few sectors that really merges financial rewards with also like kind of a bit of a do-good spirit there. It's nice to see people enjoying what you've built. It's nice to see you able to help a family out, or provide comfort or provide that level of care that they needed, and the peace of mind that comes with it. And I think that's been incredibly on display during COVID.
And perhaps those values then tie better with the more green workforce that are looking for, yes, some financial stability, but also a social component where they feel good about what they're giving to the greater good. And then the health component that they understand that at some point they're there. Maybe it's just learning for later on, or maybe it's also because they see their G1 above them if they're the G2, or even they're G3 and they see it for G2 and G1 above them, that
Sure.
this is something they're going to have to contend with. So now they're getting exposure career wise. I could see that being the case as well. Would you say senior housing is recession proof?
I would.
Yeah.
I don't like to. I wouldn't. Maybe not underline it, but I would say it's done pretty well in the
Yeah.
last few downturns. And even with COVID, I think in the initial first few months, people were really unsure of what to do. And what ended up happening for a lot of people is just really waiting too long to move loved ones in. So we had loved ones and relatives coming in much worse shape than they normally would have, because people did try to keep people at home. But for the most part, I think it is one of the last things that you change in your budget, even if the markets are in tremendous turmoil. So yeah, if you build it right, you offer a great product, you got the care, you got the team in place, you will be successful.
What does an investor look for? If the quick sheet, like you're in the casino and you get the card that says like this is a low pair to fold, or I've got like four of a kind, keep your
Yep.
straight face and put them all in.
Probably comes down to your pocket, what your budget is and what your experience level is. If you know what you're doing, you're looking for a competitive market that's got a need, even if it's hard to build, even if it's going to take you years of lobbying and years of whatever, because it will pay off in the end. If you are really altruistic and just trying to, offer great care, and you're probably looking at a market that needs it. What's a market that isn't well served by memory care, or isn't well served by whatever that particular market needs. I would never get this right. If Alice was sitting here, she would know, but I think it was Hyatt that might have been first, and I don't know, that it's one of the hotel chains that kind of
The
got into
H
this, where
brands.
yeah, it feels like that to me, but I might have that wrong and I should know this better. But one of them got into like, we're going to care for life. You're going to cut a check. We're going to move you in and care for life. And they built all this kind of active senior products. And then maybe they built 100 assisted living units and 50 memory care units. And they had it so upside down. There were people that needed way more than that. And they had to outsource and pay to providers like Belmont, like the Belmonts of the world, like the Sunrise Villages of the world, to take the residents that they had promised they would take care of forever. And so that's just a missed, that's just not being informed about kind of the cycle of aging and what it really looks like, and particularly in the markets that you're in, what the options are.
And the idea of investing retail, is there a market for that? Are there products and opportunities for retail investors to get involved in the senior housing game?
Oh, that's interesting. We have not dealt with retail people. I mean, we deal with groups that get into, they're in everything,
But they
retail
do
and
the
benefits.
packaging and the distribution of that. You're on the institutional side, and obviously the strategy, the operational side. So there's a lot more bigger checks, bigger organizations. But do you see this being something that everyone has more of a vested interest in than simply their own parents or grandparents and their own sliver of tax bill that comes from the state?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would like to think that we're looking at more master planned kind of communities that would
Mhm.
incorporate senior housing and maybe a retail component and things like that. Of course, the villages down in Florida, near and dear to my heart, it's really an interesting model to look at. And there have been efforts to kind of duplicate that, being like a senior destination that's going to have a retail that will complement the population there, and all the golfing you can ever play in pickleball now, and all of that. And of course, then you have the other school of thought, which is like, we shouldn't have our seniors isolated, they should be integrated into multi-generational housing. So
Mm.
it's a very interesting time in senior housing, because there's a real shift going on now to what people are building. It's not just that formulaic, kind of shabby chic schmaltzy popcorn piano, what you might associate with visiting your own grandparents. Seniors really don't see themselves in that mold anymore.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, this has been very enlightening. I love to hear that there's, not only the entrepreneurial bent and the struggles that go along with that, but that you continue to get it done for the boys, for yourself, for your own sanity, for your partner, and for the industry. I think that's very noble and worthwhile. You're putting in place expertise and perspective that otherwise might cause great disruption and dissatisfaction, or even worse, pain for the elderly. So there is nobleness in that work, and I salute you for doing that, Katie. That's a very kind profession to feel so passionately about. To feather in the elements of the financial or the economics of it all, and to hopefully continue to grow your brand is something that we hope to hear about. We do move now into the final stretch with
Okay.
the motif of the polio, the horse race, right? The final stretch being that last sprint to the finish. It's just 10 questions, quick answers,
Okay.
nothing what comes to mind, and that's good. Nothing that's too detailed. But I'll just hammer through these, and then we'll conclude the show. So, first time someone paid you for your work. Sometime it's the first time you were paid.
Oh, I was 9.
It was that Thomas Murphy.
It was Thomas J. Murphy and Associates.
Yes.
They're still in business. Should you
God,
need some
God
legal
bless him.
representation?
God bless him. Coincidental to your last name.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Very good. What would you tell, or what will you, given the opportunity, hopefully soon in the metaverse, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Oh, go for it. Do it. Yep. Go for it.
Go for it. Love it.
Yep.
Okay. Who is or are your rocks?
Oh, Alice Walker,
Yeah,
my business
great.
partner and very
Wow.
dear friends. Yes, I would put
Very dear
her and
friend.
my
And
mom.
not just because I know your mother looms large in your life, and
She big time. Yep.
very
And my
much so.
kids, really, the 4 of them, my little square.
It's all right. It
Yeah,
could be.
we'll go square. The 4 of them.
You sure? It could be any type of quadrilateral, or even like a.
No, I feel good about those 4. They've
Yeah.
been there with me through it all.
Fantastic. Good to hear. How will your 80-year-old self go in the other end? And you've got many, many years to go there. So how will your 80-year-old self describe your life? And if it includes pickleball and running to the shuffleboard tournament, that's fine. But how will you describe your life from now through then?
Now through then, oh,
Yeah.
so much better than you were thinking it was going to be. So I would say
Oh,
that so much better. Yeah.
ooh, so much better than you were thinking. So there's a little bit
Yeah.
of
It keeps
cloudiness.
getting better for me, to be
It
honest.
gets
So I
better.
would,
Oh, good.
yeah, it just keeps getting better. Yeah.
Well, you're a very optimistic person, and you show it. You wear it visibly and physically. You wear it well, and I hope that continues to be the case. Number 6 or number 5, $10,000 must be invested. Where do you put it today?
Oh, I'm going crypto because I know nothing about it, but I feel like all the kids are doing it. So gotta get in there.
That's it. All the kids. Oh gosh, you're
Crypto.
really showing the pearls on your sleeves now. $10,000. It may be good. I heard there's a dip in the market this week, so that might be
I don't
able to buy
know.
the dip.
Yeah.
Okay, all-time favorite meal, and I think I know this one, but I want to hear it from you. All-time
Oh
favorite meal.
gosh. Oh. Something in New York City. I can't just pick one.
Oh,
Sorry.
welcome back.
I'd come back.
We can't wait to
Yep.
see you soon.
Thank you. Me
Just make
too.
sure you bring your quadruple boost card and wear 4 masks
I know.
all over your head. Podcasts, audiobooks, or follows of the moment.
It's embarrassing, but I've been such a Sopranos podcast junkie with Sharippa and Michael Imperioli. It's terrible. Am I allowed to say that?
Why? No.
Are they listening? I mean,
I'm Italian American. It's not. The name of the show includes cannoli. You're fine.
Yeah, yep. That's but then also the serious stuff. I listen to the Daily New York Times, stuff like that. So, but the Sopranos have been with me for the last 2 years.
Love it. Love it. Most influential business read. So maybe something you've referred to, or you've read a few times, or even something that just kicked in the pants once or twice.
Oh, Bob Iger, his book. I think it's like I forget the title. It's time at Disney and his career path leading up to that. So, yep.
Yeah, not Road Less Traveled.
No, it's like a wonderful ride or something.
Yeah.
Disney play on it. I read that last year.
We're both dropping the ball on that. I'm not in the office. I would have shown it to you. It's over my shoulder. I could just picture it. We'll edit that in.
I like that one very much.
Very good. Yeah, I ordered a few and sent them out last year. I will gladly do that again for people you recommend. You've got 3 apps that you can keep on your phone. You only have room for 3 to keep. Which ones are they?
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Spotify.
Spotify?
Isn't that weak?
Not at all.
My exercise app. Oh gosh. Does my photo app count? Definitely my photo app if
Sure.
that counts. Yeah,
I
okay,
love
those
it.
are the 3. Yeah,
Okay, great.
with those 3.
And if you have a favorite quote or inspiration, song lyric, what have you, what would it be?
Oof.
This is always a tough one because I feel like people who do have these legitimately, when asked on the spot, it's a struggle.
I was gonna go with I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman. I love Jay-Z. Because like so many others.
Oh
My
my
true business idol
gosh.
would be Jay-Z, Sean Carter.
Closing out on Hova. Closing
That's
out
right.
on Hova. That's fantastic. It has been an absolute pleasure. I do thoroughly enjoy, as you know, catching up with you, not just to dig into that wonderful treasure trove of experiences and perspectives you have, but also because you're such an enigma. You have so many dimensions that are truly admirable in this day and age. Say hello to the boys. Have a great rest of your sunny afternoon in California. And I look forward to connecting you again soon. This was Coaching Conversations and Cannoli. This was Katie Heley of Walker Heley. And we look forward to seeing her on the shuffleboard courts of senior housing developments near you soon. All right. Thanks a lot, Kate.
Thank you.